This is Duke University.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Deconstructing, Reconstructing the Refugee Experience. Thank you all so much for coming. We are extremely excited to share with you the stories of the refugees that we had the honor of meeting this spring. The 6 students performing tonight are part of the DukeImmerse Deconstructing, Reconstructing program through the Kenan Institute for Ethics. We spent a semester together, taking 4 courses and engaging in a month of field research in Jordan, focused on a central theme: forced migration and displacement. We participated in community engagement with the resettled refugee community here in Durham. Some of us worked with Mastery, a K-12 tutoring program. Others with Supporting Women's Actions, or SUA, an empowerment program for women. We spent 4 weeks in Amman, Jordan, interviewing Syrian and Iraqi refugees, meeting with UN agencies and humanitarian organizations, visiting refugee camps, and overall attempting to understand the current refugee crisis and, most importantly, the refugee experience. It is not a question. There is a refugee crisis on our hands. Not that refugees and mass displacement are a new phenomena, but with 52 million people displaced worldwide, this is a problem that cannot be ignored. In this 52 million, the United Nations High Commissioner of Refugees, or UNHCR, the leading agency in the protection of refugees, has registered over 15 million people as refugees. Unlike migrants, whom refugees are often mistaken for or categorized with, refugees are legally defined under international law and therefore are entitled to certain legal protections. Refugees are people who have fled from their home countries and cannot return because of a well-founded fear of persecution based on 5 things: religion, race, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group. On top of their universal human rights, refugees have a special right that they cannot be sent back into harm's way. That is the definition of a refugee. Refugees are categorically defined by their suffering, and it is easy to see them as such: the victim, the tortured, the mother whose son died from a bomb explosion. It is easy to define their lives by their suffering. We see this in the news every day: the fetishizing of the refugee experience as a life of suffering. Tonight, we are going to challenge this narrative. In Jordan, we conducted life story interviews of the refugees. We did not ask them why they left Syria or Iraq, how many family members they lost, or if they were persecuted by ISIS. Instead, we asked questions like these. Describe a typical day. Can you tell me about your childhood? Tell me about your values and beliefs. What are the most significant moments in your life? Oftentimes, their displacement stories emerged, but our interviews were designed so refugees could share their stories as they wished to tell it, not how we expected to hear it. We asked ourselves many times, what is the purpose of our work, of the monologues? What do we want to share with you? This is what we concluded. In the next hour, you're going to hear stories of persecution, of fear, of loss, regret, and suffering. But we implore you to listen intently and actually find stories of resilience, hope, nostalgia, family, and faith. These people are more than just the sad things that happen to them. They are not just the refugee. They are mothers, brothers, a famous photographer, a schoolboy, an engineer, the recipient of a PhD. These are real people, just like you and me, whose lives were disrupted and put on hold. Tonight, we invite you to deconstruct and reconstruct your understanding of the refugee experience through the words of the refugees themselves. Each one of us will be presenting a snippet into the lives of a refugee that we personally interviewed. Our program is divided into 2 sections, focusing first on Syrian refugees and second on Iraqis, each preceded by an introduction to the country and crisis-prompting displacement. Before we begin, I would like to remind you to silence all cell phones, smartwatches, or anything that might make a loud beep or buzz during the performance. Please refrain from using flash photography. Also, please hold all applause until the end of the performances. And next, I would like to thank, on behalf of the 6 students and the program as a whole, all of the refugees that we interviewed throughout our fieldwork in Jordan. Thank you for sharing your stories, your hearts, your hopes, and your homes with us. We are deeply grateful. Thank you all for being here, and we hope you enjoy the performance.
The first 6 stories you will hear today are from Syrian refugees currently living in Jordan. The Syrian refugee population in Jordan started arriving in 2011, escaping government crackdowns through protests, actions that would lead to a conflict that would go on to engulf the entire country over the next 5 years. Unlike the turbulent history of its neighbor Iraq, Syria has been relatively stable in recent times, especially since the rule of the Assad family started in 1970. Historically, Syria has been home to some of the oldest, most advanced civilizations in the world. And only a few years ago, it was consistently featured as a tourist hotspot in various international travel magazines. Built from this rich and diverse history, Syria's people have always had a reputation for tolerance and kindness. Yet now this history and the peace built upon it is threatened as never before by the ravages of the civil war it finds itself in the midst of. Following pro-reform movements in many other parts of the Muslim world, pro-democracy protests erupted in March 2011 in the southern city of Daraa after the arrest and torture of some teenagers who painted revolutionary slogans on a school wall. After security forces opened fire on demonstrators, killing several, more took to the streets. The unrest triggered nationwide protests demanding the resignation of President Assad. By July 2011, hundreds of thousands were taken to the streets across the country. Opposition supporters eventually began to take up arms, first to defend themselves, and later to expel security forces from their local areas. Violence escalated, and the country descended into civil war as rebel brigades were formed to battle government forces for controls of cities, towns, and the countryside. By June 2013, the UN said that 90,000 people had been killed in the conflict. By August 2014, that figure had more than doubled to 191,000 and continued to climb to 250,000 by August 2015. The conflict is now more than just a battle for those for or against President Assad. It has acquired sectarian overtones, pitching the country's Sunni majority against the president's Shia Alawite sect, and has drawn in neighboring countries and world powers. The rise of jihadist groups such as ISIS has added a further dimension. More than 4 million people have fled Syria since the start of the conflict, most of them women and children. It is one of the largest refugee exoduses in recent history. Neighboring countries have borne the brunt of the refugee crisis, with Lebanon, Jordan, and Turkey struggling to accommodate the flood of new arrivals. A further 7.6 million Syrians have been internally displaced within the country, bringing the total number forced to flee their homes to more than 11 million, half the country's pre-crisis population. Overall, an estimated 13.5 million are in need of humanitarian assistance inside Syria, including more than 5.6 million children. Jordan has become one of the main destinations for Syrians fleeing the conflict. It is home to around 630,000 registered Syrian refugees. The country also hosts refugee populations from Iraq, Somalia, and Sudan. Only about 20% of the Syrian refugees live in camps, while none of the other refugee populations have access to camps and live in urban areas. It is also home to a large number of Palestinian refugees who fled conflicts in 1948 and 1967. Jordan is not a signatory to the 1951 Refugee Convention. Nonetheless, the government refers to Syrians as refugees, and the protection space is generally favorable, although fragile, owing to the country's own socioeconomic challenges. There are also rising security concerns with the increase in influence of ISIS in the region. Due to these concerns, Jordan has taken many steps to curb the influx of Syrians into the country. It has completely closed off its western border with Syria and has instituted very strict security procedures on the eastern part. Many Syrians, around 60,000, have gotten stranded on the border between the two countries as a result of these actions. Jordan also does not allow Syrians to work. Having no source of livelihood other than the meager income from UN organizations, many Syrians have resorted to working illegally. However, this is a risk for them because the Jordanian government deports any Syrians that they capture working illegally, even though such deportation is against international law. The lack of livelihood opportunities in Jordan has also forced many Syrians to make the dangerous journey to Europe. Most Syrians in Jordan live precarious lives. Even though they have escaped the ravages of the conflict, they are yet to find stability. Many of them led comfortable and peaceful lives in Syria for decades before they were suddenly uprooted by the civil war. Many want to go back to Syria, rejecting ideas of moving away permanently from the land that they feel so attached to. They hope to wait out the war and then go back to their homeland. We hope the stories we share today will give you a picture of just how extensively the displacement has affected the population, and yet how resilient many of them are in the face of such difficulties.
Sophia, female, age 36, Syrian, Amman. The difference is like the space between the land and the sky. The water is different, the air is different, and it was green. Now we realize how Syria is nice. Now we know how nice it is. I was never thinking I would leave Syria. Even when there were bombs and shootings everywhere, I didn't want to go. But in 2013, the government came and said that this is now military land and that I must go. What do I do here in Jordan? I wake up in the morning, feed my kids, maybe go to Quran classes, visit the neighbors, but I always pray 5 times. I have 3 daughters, and in Syria I was pregnant with another child, but he died while he was still inside of me because of the bombs and the shootings. I want my kids to be doctors, engineers, or teachers. I love having my kids around me, and even when they're sleeping, I feel that the house is empty. I have only 5 Syrian friends here in Jordan. I have a best friend, and we are like sisters. We spend all of our time together. We like to talk about our lives in Syria when life was good, and then the change. We all had our own homes in Syria, and now we live, my husband, my daughters, and I, in just one room. Now we realize how Syria is nice. Now we know how nice it is. I met all of my friends through a Red Cross psychology class. The psychology class teaches us how to treat our kids and to not think about what happened to us. When I came to Jordan, I was mentally exhausted because my brother was killed and my family was left behind. But after this class, I started to feel much better. When I'm sad, I like to be around my kids and my friends. In fact, I don't even have time to think about everything because I must do everything around the house since my husband is mentally ill. Sometimes he's happy, and then sometimes he's mad. He stays out on the street for days. Sometimes he's religious, and sometimes he's not. He is up, and he is down. What are the most important moments of my life? Well, the hardest was when my brother got killed in Homs. But the happiest was when I had my first child. I felt like a mother, and I had something to look forward to. But it's hard because Arabs like boys. And when I had my first child, we thought it would be a boy, but it was a girl. I was happy, but my husband was not. It was also very hard when I miscarried my last child, because he was a boy. But my youngest daughter is half of the world for me, but she doesn't sit. She wants to walk around and check everything. In the future, I hope to go back to Syria. The best part of my life in Syria was when I studied in school. I love to study Arabic, and I hope to go back and take more classes. I can still recall the playground in a park near my home where I played as a child. Now we realize how Syria is nice. Now we know how nice it is. If my life were a book, its title would be My Life is Hard.
Abu Firaz, male, age 37, Syrian, Amman. I cannot work. I wake up in the morning go buy what the house needs, come back here, and help my wife with the kids. The kids, I really, really love them. They mean the world to me. But it was easier before the kids. And now, it is very hard. I have to go and ask the pharmacy man, can I have milk for a few days? Sometimes my brother or my family sends me money to help. But we do not have money to buy food, milk, or diapers. We only get little money from UNHCR. They put all the money on a Visa card, and I use it at the mall to buy things. But there are so many things we cannot get. I can only buy food for them, no milk or diapers. They just send us a text when they put money on the card. They also just send a text when they take it away. They send a message saying sorry, but no more whatever. If you want to appeal it, call this number. They stopped providing all health services last year. I called. They said they would get back to me, but I waited for 4 months, but nothing happened. What will happen to my babies? How will my children grow if I cannot get work or do anything? My wife's operation to have the children was very expensive, and I could not afford it. So many other Syrians living here in Amman sponsored my wife's surgery. They also drop by once or twice a month to give us food and milk. But we cannot continue to live like this. Before the children, I used to work, but I got arrested, and I spent several days in prison. Now I'm very scared to work again, because there's only my wife and I here, and if I get caught again, they will deport me to Syria. Who will look after my babies then? I have nobody from my family here. I really, really miss them. I haven't seen my mother in 4 years. She's in Turkey with my brother and my sister. They do escape Palmyra like me, but they left later, and so they went to Turkey. I want to go to Turkey now. There I could work, and the kids could have a good life. But it is very expensive, and I cannot afford it. My family is the biggest value to me, and being with them means everything to me. I hope in the future that I get to meet my family again. Leaving my family was very, very hard for me. But my life right now, with my work and with my family, is very hard. I cannot do anything that I want to do. There are so many barriers in my life. If my life were a book, its title would be Impossible.
Zahor, female, age 38, Syrian, Amman. I love my 6 children. The oldest works illegally as a carpenter because they won't accept a certificate for university in this country. The middle 3 missed 3 years of school during the fighting in Syria. And now they don't want to miss a single day. The youngest are twins. They're only 4 and they're very quiet, so I take them with me wherever I go. I love my husband. He's a sweetheart. He's very helpful. He cleans, he cooks, he prays 5 times a day, alhamdulillah. Praise God. Back in Syria, we were wealthy. He had 2 stores, 1 furniture and 1 electronics. Here in Jordan, things are different. He is not okay. He's always stressed. All of his family, his mother, his 2 brothers and their children were killed by a bomb in their house. My family is still in Syria. Some got arrested, some got killed. What happened in Syria? I still have pain, but I don't know where. After 8th grade, I left school and I stayed home. I couldn't go out anywhere and I felt bored. Then I heard from my cousin about a sewing class. I said, yes, I want to go to this. So I became a tailor. It was just a way to get out and move. In Jordan, I felt trapped in my house once again. I needed to take out some of the energy I have and keep my mind on other things, not always on Syria. So I cook makdous, shanklis, and other Syrian foods for people to buy. After Eid and Ramadan, I sell sweets. Twice a week, I go to Quran class. I'm also in a group of women on WhatsApp and Facebook. We share all the news about the workshop charities give. Any classes, anything, I'll go to them. I like to be in them. I like to learn. Once, I went to a 10-day workshop. During the first few days, a lawyer told us about our rights. And the last few days were about life skills. Another time, I went to a training on Palestinian embroidery with Save the Children. Things are not easy here, but Jordanians are usually good people. They buy my foods, and they help with the charities. Many are nice and like to talk, but not all of them. One woman at a health center refused to give me a health insurance card because she was jealous that Syrians got them for free. I think she did not understand that one day she might be me. One day she might need help. Life in Syria was good. I never thought this would happen, but it has, and I will not complain. Just because life in Jordan is difficult does not mean I will stop living. If my life were a book, its title would be My Hard Life Story.
Nahala, female, age 26, Syrian, Amman. We had no problems in Syria before the war. Every day was a normal day. We woke up, shared meals together, and I took the kids to my family members for a visit. But we do not have any family here. I left my family in Syria because they wanted me to be safe, and I love them for that. But I always want to be there with them. They mean everything to me. That's why I refused resettlement in Australia. Why, you ask? Because we are looking to go back to Syria. My family is there. When I left Jordan, every step, I always told myself that I would come home someday. We lost our house, but houses can be rebuilt. We lost our shop, but that can be rebuilt too. But if we lose family, that can never be rebuilt. That's why I want to return to Syria. To keep the family together, to stay faithful to my husband and children, and to keep the 5 prayers. These are my beliefs. I'm stressed always. Whenever I hear news of my family, I become very afraid for their safety. Sometimes I call home, but it's always scary when I do this. I have to know what is happening to them. I have no idea what is going on. I often cry, but then I'll cry for a long time and I'll feel better. When I was young, I was a very happy kid. I loved playing outside my house and in my village. I would climb this big tree. In the summer, I'd bring food and water with me up in the tree. I'd stay there all day and look at the people walk around under me, but they couldn't see me. My sister was my best friend. We liked to go shopping together to try stuff on. She was the youngest of us, and we were very close. I would always take care of her until she was killed. 2012, it was Ramadan. Our family had just come together to eat and trade stories. When I got back to my own home, I called my sister, just like I did every day. The next morning, she was dead. Someone put a bomb in a town with lots of people. That bomb killed my mother and my sister. Alhamdulillah, praise God, I am healthy. I have no problems with sickness or my body. But my husband, he lost his hand here in Jordan. He was working in a machines factory, and the machine took his hand. He said that now he would allow me to divorce him because he does not feel like a man. He says that I deserve better than him. But I told him I accept him the way he is. What do I look forward to in the future? The moment when I see my husband feeling better. He's not healthy right now with his hand and nightmares of the war. I loved him before, but I love him more after the accident. I have had good times and bad times in this life. After all that's happened with my husband and my sister, I want to say something that is good for the people, so they will have the strength to go back. If my life were a book, its title will be, Tomorrow Will Be Nicer, because we will not stay like this. We will have a better life. I know it.
Adu, male, age 54, Syrian, Amman. All my life was happy. When I was in Palmyra, I was happy. When I got married, I was happy. The only bad thing in this life has been the war. In Palmyra, I was a photographer. Every year there would be a big party, and I would take photos of the musicians and the artists and the performers. But on most days, I spent more time in the desert than in the city. I loved to hunt. I would hunt small birds with my falcon. I loved the nature. Now, I wake up and I sit here every day until I go to bed. I try to keep myself relaxed. Sometimes it's very difficult. My grandson, he helps me. He keeps me running around when I have nothing else to do, and he tires me out. Thanks to him, I stopped listening to the news a long time ago. I have 6 children. The oldest lives here in Amman with me. He's married, he has his own house, but he spends most of his days in this house with me. I think he uses the other one just to sleep. I also have 2 other daughters who are in Syria and married, and 2 other sons who are living in this house. I love my children. I'm proud of them. They have many friends. They're liked by many people. If you're a good person in this life, you'll always have good friends. I am friends with my children. From the very beginning, I was careful not to act just like a father, but as a friend. If any of my kids have any problems, I'm the first person they go to. I believe this is very important. We fathers cannot be hard on our children, or else they won't come to us with their problems. I'm more than a father to them. I'm their friend. I have friends everywhere, in Europe, in the Gulf countries, even in America. When I look for friends, I don't look at where you're from or what your religion is. I'm Muslim, but I respect all religions. I believe that if you are a good person, you'll make a good friend, regardless of what you believe. But I believe in truth. It's important to be truthful in this life and to be serious. If you're a good person but you don't tell the truth, it's worthless. I believe that if we all told the truth, we could all be friends. If my life were a book, I'd call it Where's the Honesty?
Muhammad, female, age 30, Syrian, Amman. My name is Muhammad. I'm good, alhamdulillah, praise God. Sometimes I think too much, but it's okay, everyone does this. I spend my time with my 5 kids, all boys. 2 are twins, 2 years and 4 months. The twins make me crazy. If I left them in this room, they would make a mess. If I moved them to clean it, they would do it again in another place. I came to this interview to escape. The school that my other 3 kids go to is the worst school in Amman. The teachers shout and use a pipe to hit the kids. I went there to try to move them to another school, and they said, you can only move them to a private school. I can't pay for a private school. For their future, for their life, my kids need a good education. Maybe they'll become a doctor, or an engineer, or a teacher. They'll get something, as well as give something back to people. But most of all, I want my children to have faith. Everything goes away one day. Education, higher degrees, but their religion will stay. On Tuesdays, I go to Quran class. It's about a 15-minute walk. It's my exercise. I learn more about the Quran, and I meet new friends. We're Syrians. We like to have a lot of friends. I met my friends in Jordan at different places, like charity donations, or the Quran classes, or weddings. We meet for coffee, one of us will say our problems, and we try to find ways to fix the problems. Back in Syria, I had a much larger community. Everyone knew each other. But my community in Jordan is still good. I came here with my father, my mother, 2 sisters, and 1 brother. My brother's going to America. My sister just needs to get the date to leave. She's waiting with my mother, who's already had her last interview. I haven't had an interview, not even a phone call. I don't want to leave, but with what's happened here in Jordan, it's not safe. The brother of my friend was caught working, and they sent him and his family to the Azhar camp. They came here legally, with their own passports. They should not have sent him to the camp. I don't know. Before, in Syria, we said we wouldn't leave the city. But we left, and we came here. Now, I don't know what the future will be. What was my childhood like? I don't know. Mother, should I tell them all the awful things that you've done to me? It's my mother's fault I was engaged when I was very young. I was 15 years old. I was just a kid. I didn't understand life. Sometimes it said no, sometimes it said yes. One day they said, okay, the wedding will be this week. They did it very quickly so I wouldn't have a chance to change my mind. It was fine. I wasn't very happy. I wasn't sad. Back then, my life was only home. Cleaning, washing dishes, that was my entire life. If I wanted to go visit my friends, my mother would always say, no, no, no. Now my mother has changed. With my youngest sister, everything is okay. She even has a cell phone. You want to discuss human rights violations? Talk to my mother. But I'm happy now. My kids are my whole life. Watching them grow up makes me very happy. My oldest son is almost the same height as me. I like to go on walks with my kids. Before we go, they say, we want to go with you, not our father. Okay, you've asked me enough questions. This is like an exam. I just want to let you know, when you go back to America, you're going to be arrested for this. If my life were a book, its title would be God and Hope.
The next segment of 6 interviews that you will hear will be from Iraqi refugees. The Iraqi refugee crisis has been one of the most significant but least acknowledged humanitarian crises in the Middle Eastern region. Every month, increasing numbers of Iraqi refugees flow into Jordan, yet every month, fewer and fewer international donors give money to assist them. In many ways, international donors and the international media has characterized the Iraqi refugee crisis as something insignificant. We cannot make the same mistake. In order to gain a more complete picture of the Iraqi refugee crisis, it's essential to understand the scope of the crisis, the ways the Jordanian government has responded, and the impact that's had on the refugees themselves. First, the scope of the Iraqi refugee crisis cannot be underestimated. According to the UNHCR, or the UN High Commissioner on Refugees, there are currently 4.7 million Iraqi refugees who have fled their homes. Of these, 2 million have left the country and are now residing in neighboring host countries, and another 2.7 million have been internally displaced within Iraq. In the past 8 years, 1 out of every 5 Iraqis has been forced to flee their homes. Now, many have chosen Jordan as a host country. Now, the number fluctuates between 200,000 and 750,000. The number is difficult to ascertain because there have been very few systematic studies. Further complicating the matter is many Iraqis don't have legal residency in Jordan. And as such, either because they never had it to begin with or because they've overstayed their residency permit, they're often unwilling to be seen by people making these studies, and it's difficult to account for them. Now, the Iraqis in Jordan have arrived in 2 major waves. The first began in 2007, when a bombing in Samarra led to a rise in generalized sectarian violence. The next year, the US responded with the surge, leading to more Iraqis being displaced from their homes. The next wave began in 2012, when violence perpetrated by the Islamic State of Iraq and Levant forced many from their homes. This wave has continued ever since. Now, the Jordanian government has responded in a mixed way. 2 different factors impact this response. The first is the notion of temporality, the idea that Iraqis are only in Jordan temporarily. Characterizing Iraqi refugees merely as guests, the Jordanian government is able to deny them durable legal solutions and legal protection. The second factor impacting the Jordanian government's response is that of security concerns. In 2005, Iraqi nationals bombed a hotel in Amman. Ever since, the Jordanian government has imposed tight restrictions on Iraqis seeking to enter the country. The Jordanian government's response has impacted Iraqi refugees in a harmful way. Iraqi refugees suffer from Jordanian government's discriminatory policies, but in addition, the international community has increasingly provided fewer and fewer funds to assist Iraqi refugees in Jordan. This funding shortfall is the result of the fact that the Syrian civil war, in many ways in international media, has eclipsed the Iraqi refugee crisis. Every year, fewer and fewer donors have been willing to give money to assist Iraqis and have earmarked their funds exclusively to assist Syrians. As a result, many Iraqis find themselves the victims of work permit bans, meaning they cannot work within Jordan, and do not have international support to fill this void. The scope of the Iraqi refugee crisis can feel overwhelming. The Jordanian government's response can feel inadequate, and the challenges they face certainly feel real. But in order to fully understand these challenges, it's best to hear the words of the Iraqi refugees themselves, and that is what you'll be able to do tonight.
Blue Jane, female, age 40, Iraqi, Amman. The first turning point in my life came when I married my husband. He was very helpful, and he had a great personality. We were from different families, and he waited 7 years for mine to accept him. The second came when I got my graduate degree, a PhD in Islamic Studies from Baghdad University. In that moment, I had reached a target in my life. My husband and my degree made me very proud. The third came when he was killed. He was professor at Tikrit University, and after ISIS overtook the city, they started to kill anybody who had a high level of education. My husband said, "We must talk, and we must stop these people. They always kill people. They don't care about anything." I said, "Please don't talk." But he wouldn't stop, and after a month, they blew up his car. He died immediately. My son Ibrahim was also in the car, but he survived. After that, ISIS took everything we owned. It was terrible. We had to flee. I am a good Muslim, not like these people in ISIS who call themselves Muslims. I know Islam. I have studied it. Islam is not about shooting people, killing people, blowing people up, or putting your hand on other people's houses. Islam says, be a brother with Christians. Be a brother with Jews. Live with them and keep your religion to yourself. Their religion is a freedom. Don't force anybody to be a Muslim. This is the right Islam. My life stopped when my husband was killed. And now I live for my children only. I try and find a future for them. If they are happy, I am happy. Whenever they are sad or scared, I help them with the Quran. I talk with them and try and solve their problems. Their studies are very important to me. We lost everything. Our lives, our belongings, their father. The least they can have is a high level of education. Wallah, I swear I will accept resettlement in any country that is safe and where I can find an education for my children. The fourth important moment was having you come today to hear my story. I like your procedure because all of my life fits into your 6 questions. You do not look at me as just another Iraqi woman. You see, I'm not only the widow. I'm not only this woman whose husband was killed. I don't like this kind of language. I appreciate that you're hearing my story and what happened to me. If my life were a book, its title would be Sad Days.
Abdul, age 16, Iraqi, Amman. In Jordan, I had 4 friends. But in Iraq, in Ramadan, I had 30, 40. Every day after school, we would play. We played all afternoon. We played basketball, we played soccer, we played chess. In 3rd grade, I lost my friend. They killed him. He was just going to buy something from the supermarket, and there was a bomb in the street. He was afraid, very afraid. He ran, but he didn't run fast enough. So the army thought he was with the militia, and he was shot. This happens. Sometimes when we go back and forth from school, we don't know. Sometimes a boy doesn't come back home. It's hard. Hard life. Your friend is killed. It's not easy. Here it is easy, but there are no friends. Nobody. No big relationships, no family, no cousins, no friends. In Iraq, I had 50, 60 friends, sometimes 60, 70. Some of them are still in Iraq. Some of them are killed. Some of them, I don't know where they are now. My best friend, I talked to him 3 months ago. He's still in Mosul. He said life is very, very hard. He wanted money. He wanted food. He said his family hasn't eaten in the last 3 days. There's no money to buy food. And not all the food is available anyway. There's no road to bring it. No school. If they go to school and they do something ISIS doesn't like, they'll kill them. And in school, their teacher teaches them how to use a gun. So they don't go. My friend, 3 years, he hasn't gone to school. I remember when we were in school in Jordan, we were afraid to come back home. We were afraid of the army in the street. One day, I was playing football after school, and a soldier saw me playing with my football. He wanted it, but I didn't give it to him. So he hit me on the face, and he stole my football. It's hard dealing with the army in the street. Too many explosions and kidnappings, too many things. My house, every day there were guns and bombs near my house. Every day, every second. We woke up with a bomb. We slept with a bomb. Every day, guns and bombs, every day. Every 10 years, there was a big war. Every 4 years, there was a small war. Today, it's all the time. But in the last 3 years, we didn't care about the bombs. We didn't care about the shooting. The army didn't guard Mosul when ISIS came. They didn't take care of any of our needs. Every day, there was guns in the sky. Every day, there was shooting. Every day, it wasn't a big thing when someone got shot. Every day, people were dying. We saw it every day. But it became routine. Life went on. If my life were a book, I'd call it The Walking Dead.
Akram, male, age 44, Iraqi, Amman. I'm Muslim, and so is my wife. I was brought up to be open-minded, and so I do not force any religion on my kids. When I was working in Qatar after 2003, I went to Hungary for the World Jet Masters, and there we met with the Israeli team. I don't have any problems with the Israelis, and so I took photos with the Israelis and the Israeli flag. That photo ended up on the internet, and militias in Iraq found it. They threatened to kill me. That photo can kill us now. It could have killed us with Hussein in Iraq, and it could always kill us if we go back. I took that photo because I believed in the Iraqi liberation by the US forces. Yes, I supported those actions. Back when I was in Baghdad, the US forces would come to my hobby shop and talk to me. They wanted some help translating because they figured that having a local would help out more. I was okay with it, and I translated for them. I did not work officially, but the neighborhood knew about it. In 2010, when I was back in Iraq, 3 people came to my house to interrogate me. But it wasn't like they wanted to know the answers to my questions. They already knew the answers. They asked me about my sister-in-law's husband, Walid, who had worked with American forces. We were all very scared then. 2 more times, people came to my house to interrogate me and my family. They asked me about the photo, about Walid, and also my own involvement with American forces. They said that they would kill me if I did not give them information on Walid. They said that they would kidnap and kill my children. I was very scared. I could not risk my family. That is the day I decided to leave. that is the day I decided that there was no more living for me in Iraq. I'm very sure that the people who threatened me were Shia. We are Sunni, and that is one of the reasons we were targeted. Also, that photo. Anti-Semitism is in their blood. We have even experienced anti-Semitism here in Amman. When I went to take a printout of that photo to show to you at the interview, the photocopier said that he would like to kill me. He said that if it were in his hands, he would slaughter me. We also face a threat here in Amman from a group called the Followers of Hussein or something. They're a Shia group that has threatened me, my wife, and my oldest son. My son was interviewed on TV a few days back, and he said that he wanted to be a US Air Force pilot. I then received threats over Facebook. They said that I should die with my son. They said that I should be killed because I had relations with Christians and Jews. We are not safe even here in Amman. Resettlement is my family's only hope. But even UNHCR has been largely unresponsive towards our plight. I suspect that this is because most people working at UNHCR are sympathetic to the Palestinian cause, and they don't like that photo. That photo is the key to my case, and yet it is the source of all the trouble. I just want to know why that photo isn't proof of the violation of human rights. Why does UNHCR not take our documents? Why do the people we meet do not think that our lives are important at this moment in time? If my life were a book, what would its title be? I do not know. There is no way to sum up my life in a few words. Right now, all I can do is wait.
Maryam, female, age 39, Iraqi, Amman. As you know, the situation in Iraq was not safe those years, but our lives were very normal, routine. There were so many explosions and kidnappings that we only left home for important events. There were many problems with electricity and water, and every day it became worse. About the study of my kids, what was I going to do? One day, coming home from school, there was an explosion in a car near my daughter Ruqayya. Yet, I still sent her to school. She needs to complete her studies. They want to stay at home? No, they must be in school. But that's what really happens in Iraq. Most kids without school for 4 years. Before we left Mosul, we thought about leaving Iraq for another country, for a better life. But because we were a big family, it was not easy for us to leave the city. I don't know how we stayed for all this time in Iraq. We knew the situation was dangerous. The violence began with the war in Iran, and ever since, we don't remember one day without war or without problem in Iraq. Why didn't I think from the beginning to leave the country because of my children? Or because of myself? My husband? My family? I don't know why we were not thinking. What has happened to us did not happen because of our own choice. We were forced to do this. But no, I believe what we are doing, leaving the country, was the right thing to do. Why didn't I think to do that from the beginning? We hope that our country becomes stable and the situation can improve so we can return to live there. But it will not be easy, and the years are just going by too quickly. What has happened to us, it is difficult, especially the incident with my father. But these difficulties, they make us stronger, and they bring us closer together as a family. Not only the family, our friends, the people of Mosul, all of them. If we had something between us, if we weren't talking, we put it all aside. After the accident, they came to our house and we became very close. These matters make us strong, but it is not easy. Maybe I will stop thinking about returning to Mosul. The situation is just not safe, and I need a good future for my children. Now, in this age, we're not thinking about ourselves. We are thinking about our children. And that's why I'm looking for resettlement in the United States. From all these experiences, the lesson that I have learned is that I can live anywhere, in any area, as long as the area is safe. We can lie low and stay legal. I can live anywhere in this universe. If my life were a book, its title would be, "This Universe is for Everybody." If you are good, then you can live anywhere, and then you can have a good life.
Shireen, female, age 35, Iraqi, Hamdan. I'm very happy that you are here, and I will share my story. I want to cry about what happened to me every day, but I am going to tell. My name is Shireen. We left Iraq because people threatened my family. They kidnapped my nephews. They tried to kidnap my husband and my oldest son, Abdullah. But Abdullah is very fat, so it was not easy. Every day, I wake up in the morning, and I hope that what happened to us since we left our house in Iraq, that all of this is a nightmare. I'm Kurdish. Maybe if I married a Kurdish man, my life would have been better. My husband left me for 4 years. He came back just 10 days ago. When he came, he was very different. He tried to hurt me. I don't need money from him. I just need a good word, kindness, that's it. From age 30 to now, it's supposed to be the most beautiful years of a woman's life. I don't know what happened. I stay here, looking after my 3 kids and my sister. Maybe for months I don't leave this house. There's nobody. No relatives, no friends. At first, there were 3 families in this house. My mother and sister, my uncle's family, and us. But my mother is dead now. My relationship with my uncle is not good. He doesn't share his food with us. We don't have any income to buy food. We're always waiting for the neighbors to give us leftovers. I hope I can have a job and work hard to prepare good and clean food for my family. I'm very thankful for everyone's help, but I don't want anyone to help me. But this is not possible. My uncle is a very tough man. He's always saying bad things to us, but I can't do anything because it's his house. I can't even go to the police. I can't talk. I don't have any ability to get my own home. It's difficult. I must stand this. Maybe I'm a coward, not strong. When anyone does anything to me, I don't talk back or answer except saying it's okay. When people hurt me, my uncle, I don't talk or answer or make any action or reaction. Can I say something? The United Nations is not humanitarian. It's unhumanitarian. They're always lying. They say that they'll help children or women without income or with a special case. The UN doesn't give us anything. When the problems got worse with my mom, I knew she would die. I called the UN for help. They said there's snow outside, so nobody can come for help. I started shouting in the road, I need help from anyone. Finally, one cab driver stopped. He took my mother to the hospital. They said they couldn't let her in if she didn't pay the money in advance. We didn't have any money. When I got back to the taxi, my mother was dead. I always remember that. My sister doesn't understand. If I leave the house for 10 minutes, she starts shouting. She thinks that I'm leaving her like my mother. I try my best. Before my mother died, she told me to put my sister in a shelter. I cannot accept that. She's my sister. I hope I can live in my own home, alone with my children, without any terrible things. My children could eat clean food, but this is my hope. I don't want anything else. I'm not asking for nice clothes or to go out or anything more. I just want clean food for my children. I don't think this is very difficult. I'm sorry. I have to stop now. You're forcing me to remember the things that I want to forget. If my life were a book, its title would be, I Must Stand This.
Ibrahim, male, age 28, Iraqi, Amman. Back in Baghdad, I worked as the manager for Caritas for 5 years. Caritas is an organization that helps refugees in the north of Iraq and Kurdistan. I helped all refugees, both Christians like myself and Muslims. But on October 5th, 2014, I got a call from a private number that said, "You are not very good because you have been working with American and foreign people. If you don't leave Iraq now, we are going to kill you and your family because we want to make Iraq clean of people who look like you." At the time, I ignored this call because everybody gets calls like these in Iraq. It's normal. But 6 days later, as I was driving home from work, a car followed me and it shot at me. So we immediately left and came here. Our lives in Baghdad were too dangerous, even more so than Mosul. In Mosul, you only have one enemy, ISIS. But in Baghdad, there are too many troops, so you don't know who your enemy is. People in Iraq now, the government and the troops, they are narrow-minded. They don't allow my family to live in Iraq, but we have been in Iraq for a long, long time. In the night, after 6 p.m., no government, no police, no protection. You protect yourself. When I had to flee Baghdad, I locked the door, ran away, and left everything behind. Now we have nothing, and we are just waiting. We have applied for resettlement, but UNHCR has pushed back our meetings, and we're just waiting until then. I spend the days sitting in the flat, watching TV, and thinking about my future. At my age, I should be adding something to my life, maybe getting married, but no. Since we lost everything, we're just waiting. Fortunately, here in Jordan, we are free to practice Christianity. After 2003 in Baghdad, things were very dangerous for us because Christians were attacked, so we were afraid. Even the cross, just such a small thing, you couldn't wear it. My mother had to wear a hijab to pretend to be Muslim because she was so afraid. But we know that it's not Islam that caused what happened to us, and we know that very well. Too many people use Islam to justify the many things that they are thinking or believing. I always supported the refugees. Now I'm here in Jordan myself as a refugee. And I'm looking for support from where? From whom? Nobody supports me. But my faith in God gives me reason to hope for the future. Even though everybody has rid their hands of us, God and Jesus are going to help. In the Bible, there's a verse that says, "The day is coming that someone will hurt you because of your religion." That is exactly what happened, but maybe a miracle can change that. If my life were a book, its title would be Looking for Hope.
These narratives have tried to provide a more intimate glimpse into the lives of refugees. Refugees are people who've witnessed a falling apart of their world order. They've lost their homes, both in terms of a physical space and a broader set of ideas that allowed them to have a place in the world. They've been forced away from the lives they'd built, their networks, their friends, their careers, their families, so many of the things that we pursue to create the foundation of our lives. After forced flight, they had to begin anew, most of the time with much less to work with. In this new round of meaning-making, their degrees and job experience cannot translate over. They're barred from many professions. Most cannot work legally. Many lack means to generate any kind of income. They lack the same system of governments and benefits. Still, they face fees for books and uniforms for their kids to go to school. They have to pay for their own health care. Many are not reached by the organizations that provide relief, and what relief is provided is not enough. Despite all the structural forces set against refugees, what we hear are stories of resilience. What we hear are people who continue to hope, to love, to have faith, to protect, and to endure. We see how fiercely devoted these individuals are to their families. We watch them sacrifice so much for their loved ones, and we witness how they navigate their difficult situations to give whatever possible opportunities there are to their children. We hear of people constructing new communities, going to classes and attending events. We hear of refugees recreating daily life, cooking and cleaning, raising their kids, even going out for coffee. We watch people struggle for self-sufficiency by selling food or working informal jobs, despite the risks of being sent back to a camp, or worse, being deported. We've seen a woman without enough food, without enough medicine, without enough freedom, still express hope. We've witnessed her refusal to abandon a family member, even when it would be so much easier. We've witnessed refugees make hard choices, risky choices, selfless choices, because whatever pain they have endured and whatever horrors they have witnessed, their humanity and their dignity continue to define them. They continue to seek out a good life just as we all do. Despite the ground being ripped from under them, they continue to find new ground still. Each refugee has a different way of coping and sense-making. Each refugee has a different way of pushing forward in a seemingly intractable situation. Some focus on resettlement as a solution. Others put their faith in God. Still others choose to focus on the present. Many Syrians are steadfast in their belief that they will go back to Syria, with one person even refusing resettlement that they'd been granted. Syrians have the immense weight of having recently witnessed their homeland so unexpectedly descend into chaos. Meanwhile, Iraqis carry with them the burden of being forgotten. In the wake of the Syrian crisis, many forget that Iraqi refugees are not only still displaced, but are also currently fleeing Iraq from ISIS. The emergence of one crisis does not indicate the resolution of another. Even if one conflict disappears from the headlines, the persecution and the people do not. This extends far beyond the Iraqi context. As one refugee, Abdul, put it, every 10 years, one big war. Every 4 years, a small war. As we're exposed to media on refugees, mass migration, and broader geopolitical phenomena, we must keep in mind the realities on the ground and the personal stories of the people affected by these forces. Let us not abstract from the level of personal stories when attempting to grapple with these issues, but rather keep them at the forefront of our minds. While finding ways to move our international, national, and local communities forward in finding solutions to conflict and displacement, perhaps we may find inspiration in these stories to pursue whatever efforts are available to us. Even here in North Carolina, there are many opportunities to become involved in working with and advocating for local refugee communities. Like us, I hope you've been moved by this experience and have a sense of not only refugee issues, but also of refugees' lives. Their struggles, their hopes, their anxieties, their routines, their friends, their families, all the things that ground their lives as they ground ours. We would like to express our deepest gratitude to all the people we interviewed who were so brave and generous in sharing their experiences with us. We would also like to thank the director of our program, Suzanne Shanahan, whose tireless efforts and leadership have brought this project to life. In addition, we want to thank everyone at Kenan who contributed to making this night possible. Finally, we want to thank you for joining us tonight to listen to these powerful stories. We would now like to invite you to a reception outside where we can talk over refreshments. Thank you for coming tonight. We hope to see you at the reception.